and Hi, good morning everyone, or good afternoon. It is now 12 o'clock and it's Friday and it's sunny, so thank you so much for everybody being here. It's sunny up in Newcastle where I am, so I'm very much hoping it is for everybody else as well. For those who don't know me, I am Lisa, founder of Fabric, which is a training academy built to empower the most ambitious marketers to thrive. As always, I'm just to do a little introduction to anyone who is brand new to our webinars, because we always have a wonderful return audience from our community and always a really good brand new audience. So for the last year or so, we have been running a Level Up series, and it's become incredibly popular. We're just over halfway through our third series now, where we've featured some amazing people. We've had Steve Kenwright on there, Amelia Sordell and Katie Leeson. And so if you're new to these and haven't seen our webinars yet, all of the recordings are on the Fabric website, so you can go and check them out. There's some amazing, great advice on there. A few months back, we did run a webinar on personal branding, and the feedback from that particular webinar was off the scale compared to any other. It's been the most watched video on the website since, and we have had a ton of requests from our community requesting more information on personal branding. So here we are today. We're going to be bringing you another session with a slightly different slant this time. So today we're going to be talking all things personal branding again, but specifically how to become influential through personal branding. And I am so excited to have Claudia Cardinali here with us today, who is Head of Client Operations at Greater Influence. Claudia has helped some of the UK's biggest CEOs and founders become industry-leading influential figures on social media. I'm pretty sure most of you will have heard these names, but the likes of Stephen Bartlett, Carrie Rose, and Katie Leeson, of course. I'm sure that many of you will know these people now from social. What you might not realize is probably a lot of that is down to Claudia's amazing work. So as always, just a tiny little bit of housekeeping before I introduce you and pass you over to Claudia. We're going to be chatting over as much as we possibly can in the next 30 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor to you to answer as many questions as you'd like. If you can keep the questions in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box, that would be wonderful. And Maddie is behind the scenes and she will be facilitating them to make sure we try and get through them all for you. And today we're going to be talking all about building your network. So if you want to get a bit of a head start, feel free to stick your LinkedIn handle in the chat and connect with everybody who's on the webinar. Remember to share your top takeaways from the webinar on socials, and don't forget to tag us so we can support and engage with your posts. So that is enough from me. Claudia, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone's questions are.
Amazing. Well, before we get started with the questions, it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey, where you started, how you got to where you are now with Greater Influence, and what you kind of do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say that my personal branding journey probably actually started in a crisis. I left uni, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I sort of thought that I wanted to work in marketing, but I wasn't really sure, bounced around for a few years doing this and that. And I ended up working for one of my mates from uni. It was just the two of us doing student marketing. And we were about 8-9 months in, it was going really well, and then the pandemic struck, and all I could think about, like, I'd graduated by, I think it was just even a year at this point, 2 years at this point, so it was quite early. I was still in the depths of missing uni and uni blues and all that stuff, and all I could think about was, God, if that was me and I was graduating now in the midst of a pandemic, the last few weeks of uni ruined, like pulled away from all your mates, not knowing what if you're gonna see them again, flung into a world of work that was disintegrating before your eyes, like I would have just been an absolute mess. I was crying every day when I left, and it wasn't even a pandemic. So all I could think about was all the students going through that experience and what I could do to help. And that for me ended up being LinkedIn, and LinkedIn was a platform. It was just the best way that I found at that time to share my experience. So I just started posting about what I was thinking, my experiences, little insights here and there that I had had, not in any particular hope to grow an audience at that point. It was just kind of like sharing my feelings as a way to help anyone that I could. And that just picked up a bit of traction, and it turned out that people really resonated with what I was saying. So yeah, that's where my own personal branding journey really started. And then about 6 months in doing that, still sharing my thoughts and opinions, I got a little LinkedIn DM from Mr. Ash Jones saying congratulations, she's doing so well on social. And then about a month later, he put a job ad out. And I was thinking, well, I love doing that for myself. It's something that I feel really passionately about. Like, wouldn't it be great to spread important messages for other people as well and help them in their own? I think the biggest thing for me was like spreading positive messages. And if I could do that for as many people as possible, like absolutely, yes, sign me up. So yeah, 18 months down the line, I'm still doing that every day and working with some amazing, incredible entrepreneurs and thinkers. And it's just been one fantastic experience after the other. And I think the work that we do with people is so much rooted in like positivity and values and spreading messages that perhaps people might miss and need to hear at that point in their lives. So I think, yeah, it's just been a really powerful and like empowering journey for me up to this point. And the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, Katie, Carrie, people like that, have been, yeah, just absolutely amazing. And I think an added benefit is like you almost absorb all the information that they're telling you. So it's been twofold for me. Like I've been helping them share their messages and figure out what they think and the conversations that they need to be in, but also had the very lucky opportunity to be able to speak to them every day and hear their thoughts and yeah, figure out what they're thinking. So yeah, it's been amazing, and looking forward to the next 18 months or 18 years.
Yeah, and what does that hold? Any idea? Or
oh God, who only knows at this point? I think we're just like on the edge of personal branding at the moment. Like we've been saying it for a year. I've been doing this for nearly 2 years now. And I think we're still only scratching the surface with the opportunity that personal branding holds. I think the thing is we see it in other cultures and other sectors and other industries, but it's not called personal branding. Like obviously we see influencers in kind of fashion and lifestyle and stuff like that. We see artists in music. We're starting to talk about creators a lot more, but I think the opportunities that personal branding holds, and it's just a different name, I guess, for business related stuff, but like I think the opportunity that it holds is absolutely insane. And I think it's amazing that so many conversations like this are happening because people are starting to realize that the opportunities are there and what it can bring. And I always think about like when I was at school and we had so many conversations around like, you know, don't post any photos on social media that an employer might see if you've got a drink in your hand, like put everything on private, lock everything down. And now I think it's amazing how like almost the opposite is true. And like share your socials, they're who you are, they reflect who you are, they reflect your personality, they reflect what you do with your spare time. And I think that having that insight into someone's life, I guess, as much as on one hand it might be a bit scary, and I appreciate that it's not for everyone, I think if you're willing to take the opportunity, like you actually get to see someone for who they are. And I think that's a really cool thing.
yeah, it is. I mean, there's never ever been a time, has there, where you're able to connect with so many people globally around the world in an instant moment. And now it's so acceptable to be able to share some of those inner thoughts, inner feelings. You know, I remember a time on LinkedIn where I post a social photograph and you'd almost get lynched, you know, it just wasn't cool at all. So the change that I think is coming about is really great. And particularly influencers who are just what we would class as normal people, you know, doing the most phenomenal things, helping and supporting and changing people's lives, but they're not necessarily celebrity status and don't need to be. They're very happy to show, you know, their life, you know, their personality and so on. And obviously, you know, not dissimilar to your journey, Claudia, as well. Amazing. And I guess what's really interesting is you are almost the proof in the pudding, I guess, that this does work, because you know, Ash obviously messaged you, having seen some of the work that you've done on social, the job opportunity came about, and we'll talk a little bit more about what the benefits of personal branding can bring to you personally. But it's great to see that, you know, you've lived and breathed that as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So I guess just taking us right back to basics here. So what does building influence mean? How would you describe building influence and what that can do for you?
To be honest, I think this is a huge question. I think like it's almost a shame that influencer exists in the term that it does, because I think we've almost tarnished that with like a brush that like reduces the importance of that word. And I think like influencer, that status of influencer has to be earned, but I think we've changed the way that it is earned, and it's earned by like popularity and like looking nice. And I think in a way it's a shame, and I understand that for some people like that's important and that's what they built their lives on, but I think we have an opportunity now to change the meaning of the word influence. And I think more and more that we see role models like, I don't know, even people on Love Island. I think the interesting thing is the split is like, you see people on Love Island and they go on Love Island and they do nothing with that opportunity, where some absolutely amazing people have come out of Love Island and chosen to take that opportunity and shape things and talk about mental health and talk about the realities of their life. And I think that's the difference, is what you do with that opportunity, because more and more people are earning it and being handed it. And I think taking that and running with it and actually making a difference and spreading positive messages and people listening to you when you talk for the right reasons is what we should start to see influence as. And particularly as creators, like more and more people are becoming creators, perhaps a lot of the time without them even knowing that they are. I think myself included in that. It was never really my intention to become a creator or like, I don't know, start building a community on a platform. Now I find myself in that position, and people are engaging more and more in the community that I've started to build. And I think that responsibility sometimes happens accidentally and sometimes happens on purpose. And I think with personal branding, there's an opportunity to be very intentional with that. And I think with that comes like an awareness and a responsibility, I think, to do something good with it. And I hope that's where becoming influential goes, is like an understanding of the responsibility that comes with that. And I think it's good that more conversations are happening around that now. And I think people do understand that they have a responsibility, and people are being held more to account when they don't live up to that responsibility, which I think is really important. But yeah, I think influential is having something important to say and delivering it in the right way.
I love that take on it, because, you know, we all know how influential people can be, and how easy it is to spread a message, be it the right message or the wrong message, and also the repercussions of the wrong type of message, particularly if your community happens to be a younger audience who, you know, can be influenced quite easily. So I guess there is that responsibility must sit there as well. And I guess, exactly as you described there, being aware of that responsibility, but using that to do good, whatever that might mean to you and your community, is a really positive and quite exciting way to look at it, really. How have you found that responsibility? How have you managed that? Is there any pressure on you to make sure that, you know, you get it right all the time?
I mean, yeah, to be completely honest. And you know, it's very strange that like I never ever thought that I would find myself, and not even a position of huge influence. And we talk about a little bit when we explain personal branding, is that there's kind of like 3 stages. And the first stage is simply just showing up and being present. And that's what I started doing at the start. I didn't have an intention to build a personal brand or an online reputation. I just showed up for a bit. And then that transitioned into a bit of an online reputation, which is where I think I am now. And I think most people sit in that online reputation phase, and it takes a very special person to start to build a personal brand. And you see it more as you build more influence and credibility and authority, that the people that are starting to work their way on that path to building and having a personal brand. I think sitting in the online reputation phase, which is where I probably would put myself at the moment, is like a mix between like kind of trying stuff and figuring stuff out, which I think is really important when you're trying to build a personal brand, but also comes with that little bit of responsibility of, okay, yeah, I'm starting to build something now. Like, what do I need to be conscious of? And you need to be conscious of the messages that you're putting out. You need to be conscious of the people that are paying attention to those messages. And I guess doubly for myself, like I talk about building a personal brand, so there's an extra pressure of like having that reputation of being good at the thing that I talk about all the time. But I think it is really important for me to hold value in what I say, and I would never like post for the sake of it. Something that like is really important to me and also to everyone that we work with is providing value for the people that we talk to. And I think like there's almost like 2 opinions when it comes to personal branding. There's one that's like post every single day, get content out there, content is king, like it's what you should be focusing all your energy on. And I understand why people have that perspective if you're talking about engagement and growth and things like that. However, I think there's an opposite opinion, which is provide value, and that's always the camp that I would sit in, because I think you can fall into a trap of just posting online, which is different to building a personal brand. Like personal brand has a lot of intent behind it, but I think Yeah, to be completely honest, I've had maybe 2 or 3 weeks off posting because I've just gone through a shift. My role has just changed. Like, I feel like, for those that don't know, I post a lot about like quarter life crisis, leaving uni, early careers. And I feel like I'm slightly shifting out of that phase of my life now. So I just want to be authentic in what I'm sharing. And I've just taken a couple of weeks to step back and think about what that actually looks like. And I think it's really important that everyone does that. And we do it with all the people that we work with. Every few months, we'll take that step back and be like, okay, we agreed to talk about these things. What does that look like now? Do you still think those things? Do you still believe in those things? And I think that's really important as well, is like almost checking in with yourself to make sure that there is a connection between the online and the offline. I can't remember what your question was now, but I hope that answered it.
Well, that was amazing. I love that advice. Really, really brilliant. And I think, people do panic, and lots of the questions that we get around it is, can I take a break? What if I go on holiday? Am I going to suddenly lose momentum?
Yeah.
And it's so important to hear that actually sometimes you just need to realign, and that break is super important to make sure that you are still authentic in what you're posting. And I guess that leads really nicely actually to the next question. So I was going to ask about what is the secret to posting with purpose, because authenticity and real purpose is, for me, what allows me to follow really brilliant influencers, when I can really see that there's a purpose there, and normally to give back in some way and to share value and add value. But I feel like you can almost spot a mile off if people are not authentic in what they're posting. And I think this is a worry that people have sometimes when they're starting out here. How can they make sure that they are super authentic? So any advice around that?
Yeah, so the process that we go through with every single person that we work with is, before we do anything, is we have a very, very honest, frank conversation with them about what they value, what they hold of high importance, the things that they enjoy talking about, as opposed to the things they perhaps want to talk about, and the things that bring them, like, you know that feeling in your stomach when you're like, I'm really excited to talk about this, or I feel like I can't not have this conversation. Like, we have a very frank conversation about what those things are, and we look very deeply at their values, the things that they want to align themselves with. And as much as personal branding is about like output and, getting your voice out there and things, it does start with you. And it sounds cringy, and honestly, I would have been the first person to roll my eyes at that conversation 2 or 3 years ago. But like, you have to really understand yourself, because like you said, like, there's an obvious disconnect when people are literally just chatting shit online, and you can see it straight away. And I think it's really important to figure out what your values are. And again, like I just said, that's an ongoing process. Like, it does take you stepping back every now and again and thinking, what do I hold to high importance? And there's also, I think, particularly in a business stance, there's also what the business holds important. And I think it's different for different people. Like, I don't run a business. I work for a business that I value greatly, and I like to talk about it. But I think it's different if you're a founder. It's almost like those things become almost one, because you hold your business to such high importance that it's the same value that you would hold to anything that you value personally. So I think that they can overlap, and it's fine that they do. And also, I think if you want to separate them into separate things, it's fine to do that. But I completely understand that sometimes they do merge into one thing. But I think when it comes to purpose, like, I think, again, it comes back to providing value and being real to who you are, and going to things like, if you're able to do things like coaching or therapy and stuff like that, to really unearth like what you actually think. Both of things which I've done over the past 18 months, they've really helped, because you almost like prioritize your thoughts. And I appreciate that's not available for everyone, but even having like those deep conversations that you have with your mates, like, what are those conversations? The thing that you always talk about in the pub, what's that conversation? The thing that your mates have to tell you, like, shut up, stop talking about that, like, we don't care. There'll be people that do actually care about those things. And it's just checking in with yourself. And when you find yourselves in those conversations, like, having that realization moment, the recognition is really important to yourself. And I guess like an added consequence or like benefit that I found to doing this, to building a personal brand or building an online reputation, is that I've started to understand the things that I really care about. So I guess it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, you start posting and you realize what you hold in high value, but then also you have to have a bit of a conversation with yourself first to think about what it is you want to try out. And like I said, like, I've just gone through a process of kind of shifting my mindset on what that is, because I've noticed that when I'm sharing things, maybe it doesn't feel quite right, or I'm posting it because I'm like, oh, I need to post something, and I know I can talk about that. So I had that recognition moment, And it's just becoming more in tune with yourself and realizing when that happens, like a light goes off in your head and you think, oh, okay, that's not authentic anymore, or oh, okay, that's something that I really want to share.
I think that's really interesting. And what's lovely to hear is that it is a ongoing development, almost a self-development, and that you don't have to have it all worked out. And what you were posting a year ago might, I'm not saying your values would change hugely, but that thing that might be driving you to post at the time might change, circumstances might change, and to know that it's okay to test and try different things and not be too worried about the outcome as such while you find yourself. And I mean, lots of people ask the question about where to start with this. So how can they get started if they never posted before, or one of these people who maybe comment but feel really terrified about posting themselves? Where can they start if they're wanting to build an online reputation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is firstly inspire yourself. Like, particularly with some of the clients that we've worked with, a big thing that's stopping them at the moment is inspiration. And they don't know where to start. They don't know what they want to talk about. And like, research is something that I do all the time if I'm struggling. And what I've done the past couple of weeks is read articles on what you're interested in, listen to TED Talks, get in YouTube holes, and like 3 hours in, where am I? Why am I here? What have I listened to? Like, I think that's the biggest step, is like, almost like, it's kind of like dating yourself, like date yourself to figure out what you're interested in, and like, what are you watching, what are you reading, who are you speaking to, why are you speaking to them? And I think that's like important in any aspect of life, but particularly in this, is like keeping yourself inspired. And that's the first place that I started, was I watched TED Talks, I listened to YouTube videos, stuff like that. And I think speak to the people around you as well. If anyone wants to message me after this talk and find out what I listen to, like, please do. And there was one particular TED Talk actually by Brene Brown on vulnerability and authenticity, because that was a big thing for me. I was like, I want to try and keep it real, but I don't know how to do that at the moment. That was a really nice one. So definitely start there if you're like on the fence of, what the hell do I say and how the hell do I say it? But I think, to be completely honest, it's been a barrier that everyone that we've worked with has crossed at some point or another. So there's safety in knowing that you're not alone, and everyone, literally everyone, goes through that phase of, what do I say? How do I say it? Like, oh, I'm scared about posting on Instagram. I'm scared about posting on LinkedIn. Like, I can't share a picture. I can't share a video. And like, the more you do it, the more your confidence builds. But the first step of anything is just show up. Like, you have to show up. To do a workout, you have to be in the gym. Like, to start posting online, you have to be there. You have to be on LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever it is. And if it starts with just engaging with other people, like, I've actually found that's a really comfortable way to start, is like comment on other people's posts, or on Instagram, like pick 10 people that you love and always comment on their posts for a week, and you'll start to build a community just from that without even posting. And then you meet people that are like-minded and going through a similar experience, and you also realize that everyone's trying to do the same thing and everyone has those fears as well. So it's like a very, like, I don't know, a nice way to build a network. Also realization that perhaps everyone's going through the same thing and has the same feelings as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great piece of advice, that it's okay to feel a bit terrified in the beginning, or
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just know that everybody, even the most successful people out there, there is likely a talk that they've done at some point online where they'll talk around being terrified and not being sure if they're doing the right thing. And it is that small steps, isn't it, to overcome those bigger barriers. So lots of people choose to build a personal brand, and one of the main objectives, I guess, around that is reaching people. So expand your audience, expand your network, reach more people. How do people go about doing that, and is there a best way to do that, or is it all just very organic and differs depending on who's posting?
I think particularly early on in anyone's journey, it's really important to tell your story. So there's different kind of types of posts, I guess, or different ways to share, because I talk about LinkedIn when I'm talking naturally, because that's the platform I use, but this applies to everything. It applies to TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you are. I think probably the best thing to do is, sorry, what was the question again?
How to reach more people. So is there
reach more people? So
yeah.
So I think the best thing to do is tell your story, because it's unique to you. Yeah. And I think that obviously you've got like thought leadership posts, reactive posts, things where you're trying to build credibility in a specific field. But I think particularly very early on, it's important for people to know who you are, why you're there, why you're telling them these things. And I think there is a tendency, you see a blueprint of someone that's maybe 5-6 years into their personal brand journey, even 2 or 3 years into their personal brand journey, and they've earned the credibility to be able to share the unique opinions and the thought leadership posts. Whereas perhaps someone 2 or 3 years behind them, people are thinking, well, why are you telling me this? Why is it important that this comes from you? And I think that telling your story and things that are unique to you, sharing your unique experiences, help people to buy into you. So a couple of years down the line, when you've earned that right and you've earned that credibility, because it does have to be earned, you can't just start sprouting things. Even social media managers that just start talking about social media out of nowhere, I would say, like, how did you become a social media manager? What interests you about being a social media manager? You have to earn the right and earn the credibility to be able to talk about the little nuances in social that you now recognize and notice. Why, how, when, what was the process of you getting there? And I think that's really important very early on. And you see, and I guess it's frustrating on one hand, because you want to be that thought leader, you want to be that credible person, you want to be that authority in day one, and I get that completely, but it is a process. And if you follow the steps of storytelling, helping people buy into you, creating a small engaged community first before you go on to assume that people already see you as a credible and authoritative voice, like, I think that's really important. And someone asked me a question a few weeks ago, actually, of like, a lot of people now post about like careers, early careers, stuff like that. And someone asked me, like, well, why was your voice, like, what's the difference between your voice and my voice? And I think it was because, like, I didn't try to be, all I shared was my experience. All I shared was things I had done and the thoughts that I had. And it would just so happen that a lot of other people had those thoughts. I wasn't telling anyone to do anything. I wasn't giving unsolicited advice and telling people to do things that they didn't know why I should be telling them to do that. It was literally just a case of me saying, well, this is what I thought, this is the experience that I had. And the same with everyone that we work with, although most of them are credible business leaders, most of them do have very unique, important advice that they want to share with people. They also, even now still, they also still weave in their story to remind people why they have that credibility. And I think it's particularly important early on, but as you go through your personal branding journey and continue to build your online reputation, it's also important to remind people why you're there and why it's important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, people love people's story, don't they? You know, we all love to hear about how, you know, somebody made it to where they are and the struggles that they had. And it really normalizes and humanizes people. So I think the more you can share your story, everybody has a unique story, everybody has a unique experience. And exactly as you said there, you're not then given advice as such, you're just telling it how it was for you. And you will find that there are so many people who resonate with that and who are either going through that or have gone through something similar. So I love that. I think that's really great advice. In terms of, I guess, the perfect type of post, I mean, I'm pretty sure there probably isn't such a thing, but just going into the detail of the actual post. So if people are looking to start to do this and they're thinking about, you know, getting themselves a content plan together and weaving in some of their story and their experiences and their opinions, what type of post should they be looking at? And is it very different for everybody, or is there some kind of, you know, rules that you could follow?
So we talk about like finding your vehicles, and that can be on any platform, but particularly for LinkedIn, although it does work on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok as well. So the kind of 4 types of posts we would say that there are storytelling, or posts that really like shine your personality, unique ideas, social proofing, and commentary. So storytelling is just what we've discussed. Unique ideas are the things that perhaps no one else is thinking, or like advice on things that are unique to you and that maybe people haven't heard before. And again, I'm not saying that that should be every single post, because unique ideas are hard to have, we all know that. But I think when you have them and you've got perhaps a different opinion on things or a different take, I think it's really important to start to build those in, but maybe that comes a bit later down the line. Social proofing, again, is also important, particularly at the start of your journey. So things like, borrowing credibility from other places. So for example, I did a talk at Digital City Expo, which is a big event in Manchester a few weeks ago, and I posted about it, I tagged the event, I shared how many people were there, things like that. And it's like, it's a psychological thing of helping people put you into context of like who you associate yourself with, the brands that you work with, and like building up that perception of your credibility again. So I think that's really important. So like things like I would share this talk after I'd done it to align myself with this brand, and the people that you're hanging out with or the people that you're talking to, like who are they, and like stuff like that. So again, little touch points that shape your perception in the grand context of online and social media are really, really important to keep weaving in, and that will build as you grow. And it's important to leverage those situations. And I think most people think you can just post about it once and, you know, that's your checklist. The best people who do it really well talk about it in different ways and continue. Like one touch point in the ocean of social media is very small, but if you can leverage, I don't know, something that you've done really well and create 3 different posts about it, or a newsletter, or another conversation off the back of that, I think amplifying those key moments is really, really important, again, particularly early on. And then commentary. So again, you see this on different things, and perhaps this actually works really well on TikTok because it's a much more reactive platform, but particularly on LinkedIn, it's things that are happening day to day. So the reactive stuff, the news, whether it's, I don't know, this has happened, that's happened, this business has done this, what are your thoughts on that? And even just highlighting that with a couple of your opinions. Again, I don't think you should do it all the time, but I think it just becomes part of like the content mix, is really important, so people can see that you're like in tune to culture. Again, I think is really important when it comes to personal branding, because I don't know, a lot of people think that you just have to own one niche, and to be completely honest, there was a time when I thought that as well. But the more I'm learning about personal branding, and particularly the people that we work with, yes, they build credibility in one area, but everyone is so multifaceted. Like everyone has different interests and opinions on different things, and it's okay to talk about politics, but it's also okay to talk about football, and you don't have to just be like aligned with one thing. I think it's actually really important to get different parts of your personality in, because you never know, there might just be that one crossover when someone wants someone that talks about politics and football, and you're the first person that they think of. So I think that building in different elements of your personality is really important. But yeah, I'd say the 4 key vehicles: storytelling, unique ideas, social proofing, and commentary.
Really useful. I'm sure people are frantically scribbling that down just to start their content plan. And that leads quite nicely onto a question, I guess, around content and repurposing content. Do you always repost the same content on several different channels, or are you a little careful around that? Is there ways to repurpose content which is more effective than just reposting the same thing on different channels? What's your recommendation there?
Yeah, 100%. Like repurposing content is probably the biggest content hack you can possibly use. But I think it's really, really important to keep it platform specific. Like, and also like know what the limit is. Like if you've got one post that absolutely flew on LinkedIn, but you think it's probably not going to work on TikTok or Instagram, knowing yourself that it should not go on those platforms is really important. But I think repurposing, again, it's like trying things out on different platforms. We'll post something on Twitter first before we post it on LinkedIn sometimes to see, you know, test the audience there. And then we'll post sometimes on LinkedIn first, and can we take it to Twitter or Instagram? And like, I think it's great that platforms have unique sharing abilities now. Like it's so easy to share a tweet onto Instagram, but that doesn't mean that you always should. And I think having that recognition and understanding that, okay, maybe this was right for one thing. And I think at the moment, particularly LinkedIn, like I think if you are posting on LinkedIn first, as opposed to any other platform, and I think it's up to you which one you go for first. Like we use LinkedIn at the moment as like a core platform. But I think there needs to be careful consideration as to how you distribute that. But it's also very important to rework it for each platform. And like something that we're finding with Twitter at the moment is like it's less thought leadershipy, especially again when you're just starting to build an audience, and much more like you need it to be entertained or informed on Twitter. And I think if you're not doing either one of those things, then there's no point. And a question that we ask ourselves on every platform, on every post is, what is the point in this? And does this need to come from me? So I think those are 2 really important questions on any platform, but particularly if you're redistributing it, like, does it need to be heard on this platform as well, added into that?
No, that's great. And I think that, that clears up probably a lot of questions where people feel like they've got this great content and it's done amazingly well on one platform, but they repost it somewhere else and it doesn't perform at all. And just trying to figure that out along the way. But, I guess it's always about just understanding your audience, where they currently are and how they use those channels and what type of information that they digest. So I think that's, it's a really good checklist to be working through before just kind of resharing without too much thought. Okay, last question from me before we start to open to the audience. So if you've got a question, stick it in the Q&A. But I guess that, there are some people that you guys have worked with, and many personal branding agencies, where you see these almost celebrities now, these people who have, and entrepreneurs as much as anybody else, come from almost nothing to this, huge name and almost household name. Does it take a certain type of person to be able to really be successful at building a personal brand? Can anybody do it, or does it need a certain type of skill set, or is it just about, focus, consistency, and intelligent posting, I guess?
So this is actually a conversation we've been having a lot recently, because I think what everyone wants to hear is that, yes, everyone can build a personal brand. Honestly speaking, I don't think everyone can. I think it takes a very unique set of skills to be able to build a personal brand. Slightly what we've talked about, like unique ideas. The more unique ideas you have, the more able you are to stand out. Not everyone can have unique ideas all the time. Some people are very, very good at that thing. You need to have a personality that people are going to pay attention to. And again, this is like extreme versions. Like, I think everyone can build an online reputation, and I think that's really, really important. And I think if you're not showing up, if you're not building an online reputation, you're never going to build a personal brand. Like for me, I showed up and it turns out I started to build an online reputation, but you have to take that first step to be on the path. But I think there is this perspective, and I think it's a little bit what people want to hear. So sorry if this is being brutally honest, but I don't think everyone can have that extreme personal brand. I think if you're just consistent over a number of years and, you add some value, like I don't think that's always enough. I think that it does sometimes take a unique, special person with an amazing personality that has unique ideas and can hold the attention of the whole room to build an amazing personal brand. That is not to say by any means that you shouldn't show up and you shouldn't build an online reputation. Like, to be honestly, like, I don't know if I'll build a personal brand. Like, that's not going to stop me from trying to do it. So I think it's like having that recognition and self-awareness to be able to say, okay, I'm really going to try, and what's it going to take for me to build that personal brand. And I think like it's almost like setting a goal with yourself, that you have the goal of a personal brand, but also knowing that if you don't get there, then it's not a waste of time. Like if you don't become the person, it's not a waste of time. Like it's still really, really important. And I've had so many amazing opportunities and conversations and things that never would have happened to me if I hadn't started to build an online reputation. If I hadn't showed up on day one, I wouldn't be where I am now. If I don't build a personal brand, if I don't become the person, that's more than okay with me, because of all the incredible opportunities that I've had as a result. But I think, yeah, in all honesty, can everyone build a personal brand? No. Can everyone build an online reputation and reap the rewards of it? Absolutely, yes.
Interesting. And I think you're so bang on there. And I think what's really interesting is that it's possibly worth setting yourself some of the objectives around when you're going to build a personal brand, what success looks like, I guess, because success might not be, this huge, massive personality with this insane audience and the responsibility, like we spoke, that brings with that. It might well be, being spotted by an employer that you absolutely would love to work for this brand, or, being able to connect with an audience in another geographical area that you would love to be able to visit. Or so, it's maybe setting some realistic KPIs or objectives of why you're turning up consistently online, as opposed to just almost the pinnacle of what a personal brand looks like. And that way, I guess that gives you the gratification that actually turning up every day and posting that content is getting you forward. It is taking you there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like, especially at the start, like again, being brutally honest, it happens at different stages for everyone. I'd say for myself, I was posting 2 or 3 times a week for maybe 5 months before things started to happen for me. But my motive was to have the conversation. It wasn't for any result initially. And now that has changed and things have changed. But I think it depends what you're looking for. Like Ellie in our team, Ellie Middleton, I'm sure some of you follow her on LinkedIn, like things started to happen for her in about 3 weeks. So it's just like, It depends who you are, it depends what you're talking about. And there's nothing wrong with either. Like, what happened to me was my journey, what happened to Ellie was her journey. There's no comparison. Like, we're talking about completely different things, and people want different things out of the situation. So I think it happens for you when it happens for you, but as long as you're grounded in your values and you understand what you want to achieve out of it, like, consistency is very important. And I think, again, it comes back to the very first phase of just showing up. Like, you're never going to build an online reputation if you show up once a year. Whereas that consistency, as much as I don't think you need to post every day, and honestly I don't think you do on whatever platform, perhaps maybe Twitter you might need to post every day, but I think it's really important to set yourself realistic. Like, if you're running a business, if you're going to uni, if you're writing your dissertation, you might not be able to post every day, but if you set yourself about a target of twice a week, that's realistic, and you don't feel like shit if you don't do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, I'm going to take some questions from our audience here. So I've got a question here from James, which is, how do you measure the impact of personal branding?
Good question. So I think, again, it's a mix of things. Like, it comes back to what you want to achieve personally. Like, with everyone that we work with, we set almost like personal goals at the end of every month to figure out what they want to do, whether that's, well, sometimes it is just grow their online presence, and we know how to do that. Sometimes it is start conversations in X. Sometimes it is like be an advocate for this thing. Sometimes it is have a direct impact on the business or generate X amount of leads. And I think, like, again, being in tune to what that is for you is really important. Like, for me, it's to have conversations and start conversations and educate people on personal branding. Again, there's not like a box that I can tick to say that's done, but I think it's knowing that. And this is what I guess is like the difficulty that we're battling in personal branding as an industry. And when people are trying to explain to their employers, like, we should be building our personal brands, and they're like, well, why? Yeah. And it's like, you can't be like, well, if we do this, then this will happen. Like, honestly, there's not, more often than not, it's not like you can tick a box and say personal brand completed it. But I think the value that you start to see, and if anything, I'd say network is probably the biggest thing. Like, without meaning to, you start to attract people that think similarly to you. Like, what's also really important is the conversations that happen behind the scenes. We always call them like LinkedIn lurkers, the people that never engage in anything that you do, but you post that one post about the one thing that they're interested in, you get a message. And I think that's really important as well. But again, you can't track it. So I think it just comes back to like showing up with consistency, and you learn as you go as well. Like, when I first started, I didn't know what I wanted those KPIs to be or targets to be. And then now, as the opportunities have started to come in and conversations have started to happen, you start to shape your perception around that and learn more as you go. And then you can have more honest conversations with yourself or with someone in your team to say, okay, these things are starting to happen. How do we shape that more? Or if that's not what we want, how do we go down a different avenue?
No, I think that's great. And I guess, James, just probably to add to that is, I guess, knowing what impact you're looking for. So if your impact is just reach and network and community, you know, those measurables are very easy. If your impact piece is much more about securing a job or working with an employer of choice or having speaking opportunities or being asked to speak in the press, you know, those are quite measurable opportunities and impact results, as long as you have them outlined from the beginning. And so you are tracking those through. So I think there are ways to track. It's just being clear at the very beginning as to what your objectives are, and therefore what the measurables are when you start and what you're looking to achieve. Okay, question here from Abukin, who's one of our wonderful Fabric alumni. So as a student who has very little experience, how would you recommend starting to build a brand that adds value?
Firstly, you have more experience than you think you do. And actually, being a student and being young and having no experience is an experience in itself. So I think starting there is a really good place. And I think, like, again, there's so many elements you can pull out. The fact that you're still at uni, the fact that you're trying to build a business while still at uni, the fact that you're under whatever age you are and you're trying to build a business while you're still at uni, like, already it starts to build a picture of who you are and what you stand for. And I think, like, lean on that. If you've got an image that, you know, is stereotypical in people's view initially, perhaps lean on that because it's something that they can relate to and put into context. And I think just picking out, like, again, a conversation that we've had with clients before now is like, they talk about stuff and we're like, oh my God, that's so interesting, that's so fascinating. And they're like, really? So I think maybe like ask one of your mates or sit down with someone and just, or voice record yourself and talk your story through and how you've got to where you are, and then even ask someone to go back through and pick out the interesting bits, because we often, and I do it myself, like you take for granted what you know, and I see clients do it every single day, like they're just like, they think that's common knowledge, and I'm like, that is really, really good stuff. So I think like going back through your story with someone and getting them to pick out the bits that are interesting is a good place to start. But I also think like, yeah, back yourself, because honestly, you have more experience than you think you do in something. And also not having any experience and figuring out as you go and sharing those lessons is all part of it as well.
And I can absolutely vouch for Abuken. Your story is unreal. Abuken applied for our scholarship program, and out of about 130 people, she was picked for the scholarship. So that was off a very tiny bit of text. And I think you're probably an ideal candidate for taking for granted how amazing you are. So I think that's great advice for you and many others to just, yeah, not always feel like you haven't got anything, but telling your story to somebody else will absolutely see, you know, the great journey that you've been on. So I'd love to see more of your content, and we can get sharing that. Okay, so I've got a question here, which is, what's the best way to find conversations to engage with people that align with your personal values?
Interesting, that's a good question. I think, well, the obvious one is post about the things that you're interested in, and people kind of start to attract to that. Like, honestly, when I first started, I never thought that I would be someone that had conversations with strangers on the internet, and now I live for it. So that's just one of the ways to like ignite conversations. But I also think like taking the step and engaging with other people, again, I know that's hard, and you also kind of think like, why does anyone want to hear from me? At least that's what I think sometimes. But I think it is a hard thing to do, but putting yourself out there a little bit. And it doesn't have to, the thing is like, there's two ways to engage in conversations. One is like, love this is great, fantastic, thanks for sharing. And the other is offering your insights on it, which is, again, generates conversations in the conversations. And I think when you're first starting, if you just need to get over that barrier of engaging, like just go with it, this is great, thanks for sharing, or drop people a message in their DMs if you don't want to do it publicly, because I fully appreciate there is a whole process to sharing your thoughts online, and if you can't do it straight away, that's absolutely fine. But then once you start to build that confidence, and also like the more you start to engage with people that think similarly, the more you start to formulate your own opinions on what you think. And that's something that I found is really important and helps me write talks and helps me engage in personal branding more, is talking about and around personal branding behind the scenes. And that in turn builds my confidence in posting about it, because I'm like, okay, well, this person thinks this person thinks this, what do I actually think? And then to publicly share that opinion and ask people for their opinions on it is like a whole process of formulating your thoughts and refining them as you go. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's great. A question here from Michael. So he says, Sabrina Stoker recently mentioned the importance of an additional personal website to support a personal brand. What are your views on this?
I think you need to show up before you start building a website that is going to direct people to wherever. Like, I think people are way more likely to stalk you on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or TikTok than they are to ever go on your website. I think perhaps at a certain stage in your personal branding journey, then it's something to definitely think about. I'm not sure whereabouts you are on that scale, but you know, we've worked with people who run companies, own agencies, run businesses, and they don't have a website because they know that they could spend X amount of money on it, and the chances of people clicking through to it isn't going to offer them any new information that they don't already have all over their social channels. So I think for the amount of money that it costs, like seriously consider that. Maybe just have like a holding website with links to your socials. So if someone Googles you, on the off chance they do, then there's somewhere like with central with all the information on it. But I think spending loads of money on a website just for you personally, I'm not talking about business website, is a very big step. I'm not sure if it's needed so early on. Maybe something to consider later if you've got like podcasts and things like that happening. But yeah, as for the importance in building personal brand immediately, like I don't think it's that important.
Good. No, good. Okay, so I've got a question here which says, do you think your self-discovery journey on LinkedIn helped land your current role and change your career trajectory?
Absolutely, 1000% yes. So I think you, as you start to build your online reputation, you get a lot more comfortable with sharing parts of yourself that perhaps you wouldn't have shared before. And that is very attractive to people that are hiring, people that are always on the lookout for good people who align with the values of their company. We're not hiring at the moment. Yeah, we're always looking for people that align with things that we value at Great Influence. And I think that's the value of building a personal brand, is that you have a CV and you give it to one person and it sits in a pile with 1,000 other CVs, and you're relying on that one person to look at this CV at a specific moment in time. You're not, whereas building like an online reputation across however many social channels that you want to use, you are constantly creating touch points with potential future employers throughout the day, whilst you sleep even. You're not waiting for them to come across your CV in a pile when they've already read 10,000 others and they can't even be bothered to look past the first sentence. And it's also allowing them like a deeper insight into your life. Like, you know, you're talking about playing football on a Saturday morning, or you're talking about, I don't know, your grandma, which I talk about sometimes, but it's like adding that layer of personality that I just don't think you can get from a CV or even any other way of hiring. And it allows people to connect with you on a deeper level, even whether that's a recruiter and it's not the employer directly. Like, it's just building the relationship. And if there's one thing that I've learned throughout this whole process of personal branding, the people that we work with, the community that I have now started to build, is that relationships are the center of everything. And if you have an opportunity to build those, then do it and take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on what type of business you're looking to work for, entrepreneurial businesses are much more open to hiring people that they've seen online, that they've met, that they've built up a relationship with, without even having a role there already. You know, and we've done this many a time in the past where we have, you know, built a connection with somebody online, absolutely loved what they're doing, built a relationship over time, and then offered them a role when there wasn't even an existing one. Because, you know, ambitious entrepreneurial businesses are much more agile to be able to create roles for the right people, as opposed to a full-on recruitment strategy that has to sit, you know, in a much bigger corporate. So, you know, you, as exactly as you said there, Claudia, you know, you are touching lots of different people with that content who are keeping an eye out. They're looking for people. They're looking for really special
They're
people.
lurking. They just lurk.
Absolutely. It sounds a little bit creepy, but it's
in a good way.
Okay, last question from Charlotte here. So Charlotte says, my way of talking about my experiences and lessons learned is to find the balance by not just ranting about previous things that haven't worked, but turning that into something good. How would you go about recommending that you almost turn those things that haven't worked into a positive?
That's a really good point. And I think like sharing it just comes to literally one sentence. You can rant, I rant all the time, but like adding that one sentence at the end that is the reason why you're ranting, or the outcome that you hope to happen as a result of that rant, like just gives people that little uplift. And I think people really underestimate the value of writing in any content creation. If you think Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, maybe not as much, but LinkedIn especially, like it all comes down to how you can convey your point. And it's something that I've learned and I'm always trying to improve on, is how you get that point across. And I think like even showing a bit of interest or doing a bit of research around copywriting, if you're not a copywriter, and like an important thing that I always try to do now is like be in tune if someone's delivering a point to me in a really coherent, positive, impactful way. Like again, it's just that little light that goes on in your head is like, how are they doing this? Why am I paying attention to this specific thing? And like starting to become a little bit more in tune to those things and noticing them, and instead of just mindlessly doom scrolling on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, the things that make you pause or the things that make you pay attention, why are you paying attention to that? What is it? Is it the fact of what they're wearing on Instagram? Is it their caption? Are you crying at a TikTok because of XYZ? Like, why are you doing that? Is it because they're educating you, informing you, like making you laugh, making you cry? Is it that you really resonate with what they're saying? Is it that the delivery is so impactful that you couldn't not like it or engage with it? And it, like, if you are like, essentially what everyone is trying to do is become a content creator or a creator, like start to see yourself as that and start to almost show up as a creator before you even are one. And like, what would a creator do in this situation? If you're scrolling TikTok, you're looking for inspiration, and that's a huge part of our role as personal brand managers. And what we do is we look for inspiration and we pay attention to the things that grab our attention, because that's all you're trying to do with anything that you deliver, is grab people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some really good points there. And probably, Charlotte, just remembering that every rant that you have or every lesson that you've learned, there's normally a positive outcome from that, even if it's simply that you've learned that lesson and you won't make that mistake again. Or so, yeah, I think always, you know, there's naturally usually a positive, even if it comes sometime later to, you know, a disaster. I mean, some of what I say my biggest failings have turned into be my biggest successes. So I would just think about not isolating that little piece in terms of a failing, and just thinking what it taught you, what it's turned into, and what that might have brought as well. And that can, you know.
Also, I live for a rant, so keep them coming.
Yeah. I was just going to say, that's great to have a rant, isn't it? And that does catch attention, because sometimes we love a good rant. Okay, well, we are right at the end there. So thank you so much for everybody's questions. They've been great. Claudia, thank you so much for sharing all that information. It's been absolutely brilliant. I'm certain everybody will have gained so much from this. And just a reminder that the webinar will go on to the website. So if you want to watch back, which we know loads of you do, to start to go through all of the information again, or if anybody had missed it, it will be up there today. We are back next week with a killer topic all around building confidence, which is a huge part of what we try to do with our marketing community. And then our final webinar will be wrapping up the series on how to ace your PPC strategy. So make sure you're signed up for both of those if they are of interest. And don't forget, our April cohort is now open for enrollment. We actually kick off 1 week today. We've got the most amazing group of marketers from all over the world actually on this cohort. So it's going to be a really interesting network and community to be involved with. So if you're still thinking about it, this time to sign up. Otherwise, yeah, thank you again, Claudia. We'll be watching your journey, no doubt, with not lurking eyes, but very close.
Please feel free to lurk.
But yeah, thanks for sharing your story. Honestly, it's been just really brilliant to hear kind of your journey and the journey that you're still going on. And I think probably instilled a lot of confidence in people to just go out there and make their first, you know, attempt at personal branding. So thank you.
Oh, I hope so. No, thank you so much for having me on. If anyone's got any questions, please just feel free to drop me a message.
Will do. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Enjoy the sunshine and see you next Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.